Alright everybody, this is 13 with Superior Mobile by 13, and this is going to be a weird video because all I'm doing is documenting the process and procedures of how I am going to be eliminating all of these vertical check marks in this grille style on the front of my Hyundai Kona Electric. It was my opinion that this bumper style was just a little bit too busy for my preference, and so I mocked up a few different ideas on Photoshop, and what I eventually settled on was eliminating all of these vertical ones and retaining all of the horizontal ones.
I want to take a second here to go over the design phase. In this picture, named Stock, I've mocked up the front bumper on the vehicle in its current stage of development. My first thought was to eliminate all of the horizontal indentation. This is vert. But since I also required that the charging port logo would be removed, that would have required me to also get rid of the outside vertical indentation column. That made the design element more narrow than I preferred and no longer playing well with the charging port door symmetry. I tried working around those issues with other ideas. This is 3Z, where I tried groups of 3 and to create negative space to continue a visual line following the charge port door. It's too toothy. This one is called Sparse, where I aimed for equidistant between the vertical lines. It seemed forced, like why would I want a few dash lines down the front of my car? Lastly, Hybrid, where I try and retain as many of the indentations as possible, but continue the charging door visual line with empty space. Ultimately, I didn't like any of the variations more than the original verts, but 5 months later, right before the project was set to start, I had a last minute idea and Horizon was born. I immediately loved that the charging port logo was removed seamlessly and all of the remaining design elements still played well together. It was much less clutter than stock, and I loved the dominant horizontal element theme throughout the entire front end. And with a clear vision of the results I wanted, I left the design center and went into the bay.
So the first step here, obviously other than getting the bumper off of the vehicle and getting it on the stand, was to individually sand all of these tiny little divots and make it so that I'm going to be able to have proper adhesion with the filler material. And yes, I did it by hand, and I did it by making little tiny little rolls of, I used 120 grit sandpaper on this, and basically I went in there and I went sand, 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 and it took about an hour per row, and it's about 18 rows, so you can do that basic math. Okay, now I've filled all of the holes with this epoxy filler, and I have overfilled each one so it can be sanded down flush, and as you can see I've already accidentally started sanding because I'm terrible at making videos. And now in retrospect, I honestly wish I had just used a Dremel and like some kind of sanding tip to gouge out all of those, because I really kind of assumed that this would be more watery and less viscous and would be able to like kind of divot and fill each hole, but instead it was very thick, and so I really just had to build it up. And if I had known I was going to make such a big mess, I wouldn't have made such a good job of the sandings, but whatever. And in case you're wondering what products I am using here, okay, so now I've sanded everything with the 3-inch DA with 180 grit, and as you can see most of it's pretty smooth. There's quite a bit of overburn on the top here. There's also quite a few little air pockets or dimples or blisters or whatever you want to call them, and a couple little low spots, but that's all going to be addressed in the next step. I am excited already though to see that this dumb little plug logo is going to disappear. That's going to make me very happy, but alright, let's get back to work. I'm in the middle of this insane step of creating more work for the next step, but it made me actually realize during this process that this would have actually been easier if I was just smoothing all of the holes, because trying to protect these while I add the body filler is a lot of additional work. Ironically, if someone was going to actually do this, it would be easier to just do all of them, but personally I just really don't like that super smooth front end look of electric cars. I think it looks boring and lame. Plus the facelift already has a smooth front end, so obviously I gotta be different. Okay, and here is the total mess that I have left for myself to sand now. It's late at night, so I'm gonna take a break. However, this is the product after I applied a huge amount of body filler material all over the thing, and then I sanded it all off, and I made a huge mess all over in the shop, just like I always do when I take on a project like this. And then I went back and actually spot treated it, which is what I should have done from the first time, rather than just trying to mask off these little holes, is going in individually and doing spot treatments with a tiny little piece of thin cardboard. Ooh, that's a quinoa wobble, I think. And then that allowed me to apply it in a much more thin, controlled manner, and that's going to help me blend and sand this so much better. I don't exactly claim to be a body guy, but I do claim to be able to work real hard through really dumb problems, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm done with all of the sanding and blending, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable and pretty happy with the results here. However, I do have two primary concerns as a final product going down the line many years later. The first one is that inside of every single one of these divots, when the paint goes down, it could potentially lift if it doesn't bite well enough. So I used the red Scotch-Brite pad to try and scuff up the insides of those as good as possible. Everything else is 320 grit, and I took the 320 grit onto every one of those divots and kind of did a little cusping as well so that I could try and get that paint to bite a little bit better, since that is a big concern. And the other big concern that I have on here is haloing. This epoxy on the inside is going to change at a different rate than the plastic itself, so you have the potential of a halo appearing around every single one of these filled sections over time, and that halo will basically show up as a very fine ripple underneath the paint. Generally, the way that you get rid of haloing is by doing this blend over with the body filler, but unfortunately it was just really difficult to maintain feathering body filler approach over all of them, and so there it's a give and take. And the primer that I'm going to apply today is actually this thing right here, which I've never used before. Primer is down now, and this is a really exciting part because it's finally doing like the first proof of concept reveal. Last night I did quite a bit of 600 grit sanding on this. Technically this section isn't sanded yet, and can you tell the difference? So I'm going to do a little bit more 600 grit sanding on this, make sure they get appropriate blending from primer to painted surface, scuff up all of this side over here, this top section along here, and of course this entire side right there. And then I'm going to be ready for paint. I'm also using the gray Scotch-Brite pad in order to try and get inside of these divots, and again, just promote adhesion of the paint. Here it is, finally painted and clear coated, and I will say this actually looks like a cool design. It's not too busy, it's not perfectly smooth and uninspired. I went over this middle section several times with white base coat. You gotta do light coat, and then I blended it all the way out, so I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't have any conflict of white. And then came the clear coat, and that's where I'm pretty disappointed in myself. For whatever reason, I don't know if I had some settings wrong or something, but I got some pretty wicked orange peel on this thing. But once I hit this with some wet sanding and polish it, that's gonna be a lot smoother, and I'm gonna be a lot more pleased with it. So it looks great from, you know, a few feet away, but of course I'm right up on it, and I don't like it, so I'm gonna do more. I am trying to remind myself that this is a front bumper of a car that is going to be a daily driver, so rock chips are going to be inevitable. So not to get too carried away, but I do want to at least have a finished product that I'm proud of. Man, what a marathon that was. It is now blocked out. Started sanding it with 1000 grit, 1500 grit, 3000 grit, then cutting material, machine polish, and ultra fine polish, and I'm okay with that. We still got a little bit of a wiggle in there, but again, this is a super flexible paint job, so I'm happy with this. This is really nice. Here I burnt through the paint right on this corner, and that makes me super sad, but I'll be able to fix that later on. We're gonna call this a success. All of those vertical holes are filled, and this thing is just beautiful now, but I think this is just such a better look without that dumb charging logo there. And also we've got this symmetry design that isn't even on the newer generations, the facelifts that are all smooth, because it still has that door, and I think this just looks better because I've got the symmetry of that panel there and this panel here. This is my 3-inch D8, and these are the sanding pads, the 1000, the 1500, and the 3000. And this is my 3-inch polisher that I used with these three products. Okay, here it is, completely assembled. Lower section got painted at a previous time, that little upper and mustache section got painted at a previous time, and these side panels got painted at a previous time. The front end is officially ready to go back onto the car, which is a long time in the making, and I'm really pleased with it. So I'm gonna make a bold statement and say that I have the best looking front end of any Hyundai Kona, which is a little bit like saying I'm the smartest kid with Down syndrome, so I don't really know if this is a bragging right worth bragging about, but it's done. No, I did not keep track of how many hours I put into this. This was absolutely a project of passion, not for profit, and this is certainly not a service that I would offer for customers. And frankly, I don't think anybody would want to put this much time or money or effort into a Hyundai anyway, but you know, whatever. I am silly, and so this is what I did. I think the design that I came up with here is light years ahead of the way that the Kona looked when I first got it. If you like the work that I did here, feel free to share it around and at least hit the like button. Feel free to become a subscriber if you think I do pretty rad work. Other than that, I just request that you have yourself a wonderful day, and I'm gonna put this thing on the car now. Thank you so much for watching. This is 13 with Superior Mobile by 13. I'll talk to you later. See you.